Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about MBO behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created MBO. MBOM helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where MBOM Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy MBOM and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I am really excited that you're joining me for today's episode of the show. And before we dive into this episode, I just wanted to give a shout out to this week's sponsor for the episode. This episode was originally done live in the Facebook group and was sponsored by Interval. Interval is truly changing the game for yoga teachers and wellness entrepreneurs who are teaching online. So you can learn more by visiting interval.com/J/MBOM. And I'm going to talk a lot more about Interval throughout this episode. So I'll leave it there and go forward with introducing this week's guest. So I am really excited to be joined by Alicia Ace Easter for a live podcast interview where we talk about multi-passionate yoga businesses and how to lead with love. She's a yoga and meditation instructor, a brand ambassador, and a master Reiki practitioner on a mission to empower others by helping them work through emotions physically. And so in this episode, we talk about her yoga journey, what inspired her to create her yoga business, and really how she balances all of her offerings and being a multi-passionate entrepreneur, all while leading from a place of love and joy. So in a time where it feels like there's a lot of, things happening in the world and a lot of darkness, I felt like having this conversation was a really, bright spot and just a piece of joy. So I'm really, really grateful for this interview, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as much as I did. All right, without further ado, here's Alicia. All right. Hello, welcome. We are live. I am super stoked for this. Hey, everyone who's joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, or hey, everyone who's listening to this later. We're really excited to be here. I am super stoked to be joined by Alicia Easter, who I'm going to get to introduce herself in just a second. But before we get there, I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor for this live episode, which is Interval. And Interval is amazing. I am so stoked that I discovered this company. They are seriously changing the game for yoga teachers and yoga business owners and wellness entrepreneurs. They basically have everything you need to run your business, both in person and virtual. They have on-demand video library that helps you stand out. You can record HD content directly to the platform. You can even add music, which is super cool. It's the only platform that I know of that allows you to do that. of course, you can create programs, courses, video migrations, and so much good stuff. So we'll talk a little bit more about Interval later on, but if you are interested, it's interval.com. And we're just really stoked for them sponsoring this episode so that we get to have this fabulous conversation. So Alicia, welcome.
Hi, Amanda. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. This is so great. I've been looking forward to this. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm stoked to connect with you. And can you just introduce yourself for myself and for the audience?
Sure. My name is Alicia Easter. I am the daughter of Cynthia Geneva Lawson and the granddaughter of Eleanor Cecilia Lawson, and so many amazing ancestors that came before me. It's why I get to be here. An embodier of joy through all modalities, starting with I'm an entrepreneur. I teach yoga. I guide meditation practices. I'm a master Reiki practitioner, and I call Los Angeles, California home. So that is me, and I'm a mom of 2 cats, Sir Reggie and Lady Bell. So in case y'all see them not minding their own business, that's who they are in the frame. So yeah, that's me. I'm so excited to be here.
I love it. And if your cats join, that's totally fine. I'm a big fan of cats. I don't have any because I travel kind of like full time, but I was just living in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, and I adopted these like 2 little street kitties, not actually, but they lived really close to my house. So I'd go visit them every day and feed them. And it just became like a part of my daily ritual to go see my kitties. And I was like, I think I need my own cats.
Yeah. Everybody needs a cat to keep them in check, because we're not in charge. They let me live here and record from here. So it's really kind of them.
Yeah. Well, thank you to the cats for allowing us to have this time together. Amazing. And so can you tell me a little bit about your yoga journey, like how you got into yoga, what inspired you to become a yoga teacher, all that good stuff?
Sure. Yoga called me. Yoga invited me in many years ago, over 15 now, when I was traveling. I had this job living in a new city and state every 6 to 8 weeks, leasing apartments when I graduated from college. And I didn't know really what I wanted to do, with my degree. I had a degree in business and, minor in human resources. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to go into an office yet. So this amazing opportunity came about for me to travel around the country. And so when I was 19 years old, my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. And so during that time, I was a freshman in college, and kind of throughout my college career, I never really grieved her death. I never really dealt with it. I just kind of went along to get along, I guess. And so after, graduating and getting into this job, living in these different places, I realized that I'd really buried the fact that I hadn't grieved my mother. And so I started traveling. I was in the city of Chicago, and I saw this big sign that said free week yoga, 7 days free yoga. And so I decided to pop in, and it was a game changer. First minute, the minute the class started. And so yoga, like I said, called me in because I'd taken a class before in college, and I was like, this is not my forte. It's too slow. And so also during that time when I was traveling, running was also a healing modality for me as well. And so I needed something to supplement the time that the wear and tear I was putting on my body. So yoga was recommended to me by a few friends. And so during my time there, and the many times I would come to class, I realized more and more that I was loving it, and my body was feeling good, but my heart was still very much broken from losing my mom. And I was talking to a teacher after class because she'd noticed I had some difficulty coming into camel pose, Ustrasana, with your hands behind your back and opening up your heart. And she said, well, are you experiencing any sort of heartache or anything like that, a grief? And I said, well, I don't know. My mom died, but that was 4 years ago. And she was like, okay, well, it's still taking up space in your body. And so I was like, okay, well, so I kept going because I knew that learning that about the body and the mind and how emotions take up space, I said, okay, this is going to be the catalyst that's going to start me on this grief journey of actually grieving and really mourning the death of my mother. And so I kept going back. And each and every time I step onto the mat, a new kind of like opening would occur. And so I knew that it was something that I wanted to have in my life. And I knew that it was something that I could teach because I loved it so much. And I was like, oh, the natural athlete in me. I'd played sports my whole life. So the natural athlete, the natural competitiveness in me was like, well, I can teach this. I can do this. And so I decided to become a yoga teacher, but it wasn't at that moment I decided to become a yoga teacher, because in a perfect world, you acknowledge the grief, you move through it, and then we're done in 6 to 8 weeks. But if you're human, we all know that's simply not how it works. So the more and more I started going to class, the more I was realizing not just only the grief of my mother was coming up, but different other atrocities and traumas that I experienced throughout my life were also coming to the forefront of my mind as well. So I took some time with my body to understand what was happening. And I was still traveling around the country, and yoga was a really easy thing at the time for me to find a yoga studio in any city that I was in. But what I didn't see, Amanda, was that I didn't see the diversity in the teachers. I didn't see the diversity in the students in these studios that I was attending. And I thought, this is interesting. Why are not more people of color here? And especially what I learned about kind of where yoga originated and the history of it, the lineage of it, the many lineages of it. And so that, again, was a catalyst, was an inspiration for me to become a yoga teacher. And so that's kind of essentially where it started for me, and what kept me there at the time. But now in my journey, 15 plus years later, I realized that the athletic component of it is like second, third, like not as important. I still very much see movement as a healing modality for me and so many others. However, it was the mind clarity, it was the acceptance, it was the forgiveness, it was the love, it was the truth, it was the vulnerability that going through a yoga teacher training in 2016 afforded me and helped me kind of like catapult in this direction of like full liberation. So that is really, it's been a beautiful journey. It's been unearthing. It's been hard, especially when emotions come up and questions come up that I wish that I could pick up the phone and call my mom to ask her. But knowing that she and I are connected so deeply in the spiritual realm, and understanding that because of my yoga practice and because of my meditation journey and because of the Reiki and the teachers who I sought out, has helped me kind of to realize. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And I love hearing how you were able to just transform so much in your life, like both going from like the physical aspect of yoga to this more spiritual side, and then also healing with grief. And I feel like this is something I hear so often from yoga teachers, is people who, came to the practice because they wanted a workout, or they had heard that it was good for flexibility, or it might be good with another sport you're doing, like running. And then, they stay for all the other things, all those things that were taught in teacher training, all the other limbs of yoga. And that's really been my journey too. So it's really amazing to hear that. And I want to touch on, you have so much good stuff going on. You've got, meditation, Reiki. How did that kind of weave into this journey of yoga too?
Well, and this is my mother's doing, friends, because I just don't know how to sit still. And she always had us doing something from when we were very little, just to ensure that we stayed out of trouble. And, growing up where I grew up, in that area during that time, it was just like so much nonsense out in the streets that my mom did a very good job, in my opinion, ensuring that as best she could that my brother and I stayed out of trouble. So we were always doing these extracurricular activities after school and on the weekends. And so that kind of, made sense to me, the job of traveling around the country and moving all around the place and exploring. But with that is the quite literalness of running and the ethereal perspective of it, right? Of running away from dealing with grief, dealing with, heartache, dealing with anger, dealing with all the different ways in which I was not exercising and using my true voice most of my life. So what meditation taught me was to sit still in my own way. And yes, I've found a lot more stillness over the last few years of me becoming, taking a training with Tracy Stanley for meditation, but then also kind of understanding when I get still, that's when the magic of me being able to really listen to God's word and listen to spirit and listen to my angel guides and just listen. Because I wasn't listening, I was just kind of going, kind of moving, kind of not wanting to sit still because I didn't want to deal. And with regards to Reiki, that was introduced to me by a former colleague of mine who, gifted me a session with my teacher, Kathy Golden. And so I went there, and I'm a person that's like, okay, so what do I need to do? How do I need to do it? Give me the checklist, and then I'm going to check everything off, and then we're going to be good here, right? That's how it's going to go. I experienced the heart, the ache, after a relationship that I was in for many years, how I ended that relationship. So I was experiencing heartbreak and whatnot. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to go here, and that's going to be it. One session, I'm going to be healed. No.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, right? Little pro tip, just don't do that. You heard it here first, friends. But what it did, Amanda, was again help me realize in the same way that yoga did many years ago that, this heartbreak that your experience was ended up being freedom. Freedom happening. What that did was okay, so we still got some other things buried that we have been masking and calling it, I'm only feeling this way because of the breakup. It's oh no, we just didn't deal with a lot of stuff that we got after we got into this relationship. We thought that this person could fill this void. We sought outside sources. We looked outside of ourselves. And so what Reiki did was it gave me permission, and it let me off the hook, and it charged me with looking inside of myself. And so I realized going back to Reiki a few times, and my teacher was like, you know what? I want to invite you to come and do a training. I think that you would really enjoy it. And I said, well, I don't know. And I did a training in 2019. And I just sat with it. It was one of those things with much like yoga, I sat with the classes, I sat with the lessons, I sat with all of it until I felt called to kind of guide people through it and become a practitioner of it. And then last year during 2020, I became a master Reiki practitioner. Again, my teacher invited me to come and do that training, and because she felt called and felt like I was ready for it. And I was, because I was very much deep in the seeking. And that's very much my personality, and seeking and wanting to know how I can get better, how I can, learn more, and not just to keep it for myself, but to share it with other people, that understand that my mission here is greater than me. And so the wealth of information that I absorb and really absorb it in my body, hold it, sit with it, study it, and then release it and let it go, that will, that helps me be a better teacher, a better coach, a better friend, and a better partner in life. So yeah, that's kind of how it all kind of came together for me, but slowly, but I was ready, I said yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such an important lesson for people to remember is sometimes we do have to just say yes to these experiences or these trainings or these opportunities. And we just never know what's going to come from them, right?
Never. We never know. And I've much like, I used to be a marketing manager for a commercial real estate company for almost 7 years. And I recently, left corporate America, as my teacher said yesterday in our Reiki session. She said we semi-retired
I love
from
it.
corporate America. And I was like, oh, I love that. And so I did that in December of 2020. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'd finally, I'd run out of excuses, much like when I ran out of excuses as to why I couldn't do a yoga teacher training, why I couldn't do a meditation teacher training, why I never really had excuses for the Reiki. It just kind of that unfolded as it was supposed to, and there was no resistance there because it just all made sense. But yeah, having me saying yes and saying yes to myself, the universe was like, all right, here we go. All systems go, she's ready now. She's following the path that we set out for her. So let's continue to support her and ensure her that, it's already been designed. It's already done. So it's just time for me to accept it.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. You worded that really, really, really beautifully. So I love
Thank
that.
you.
And I'm
Thank
curious. So
you.
you said you quit your like full-time corporate job, December
Mm-hmm.
2020. How on earth were you balancing all this stuff? Because you already have a lot going on in your yoga wellness business.
I know. Well, the candle line came July of last year, but I was teaching it again. Like I said, I came out the womb ready to rock. I came out there. I'm an Aries sun. I'm a Leo rising, and I'm a Taurus moon. So I was like on all systems go, like right out, let's rage. And so I knew that in my heart, I wasn't doing the work that I was put here to do. Even before I joined the last company that I semi-retired from, I knew that this was not my soul's purpose. And so I was teaching almost five classes a week while also working a full-time job. And this wasn't just a job where I go and clock in at 8 and leave at 5. It was very demanding. It was beautiful work. At that time, it was my dream job. But I knew having the yoga actually helped me balance a lot of the resistance that I was feeling each time I had to go to work. The resistance that I was feeling was, okay, well, I've got my yoga, I've got my meditation as my balance, from this corporate environment, right? So I was managing both, kind of like the scales were even for a little bit. And then it was like, okay, I had to make a decision last year. I mean, I think we all had to make a decision last year and step into the fact, okay, we've been balancing all of this stuff for far too long. So now the earth is broken wide open. So what are you going to do? Are you going to keep pretending to balance between the two? Or are you going to finally step into what your soul's purpose is, what your calling is, and stop being unafraid? Get out of your own way. And so that's what I did. And because I couldn't balance it anymore, Amanda, it was like my former boss was getting tired of like me not delivering in the way that she was used to me delivering and fair. I was doing myself a disservice in that regard because that's not how I operate. I operate in a very, I have a lot of integrity in my work, and I'm very proud of my output. And so when I stopped being proud of my output, I knew it was time to go.
Yeah,
I knew
for
it was
sure.
time to go. So
yeah, that's
yeah.
I can definitely relate to that, like feeling like you're not doing the work of your soul's purpose. But I think sometimes it's really easy for us to like justify so many other things, like
Mm-hmm.
I get paid well, like maybe you have like good vacation or
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, whatever it is, like, or I need a little bit more money in my bank account as a cushion before I take this leap. There's
Right.
always some reason to not
Right.
leave something. And I think it's just really brave to like take that step. And I'd love to hear like, how did it feel to leave that job?
It felt like, I wrote my resignation letter like 60 days before I turned it in because I was like, okay, I'm going to turn it in 30 days. And give a 30-day notice, right? Because it wasn't like I was going anywhere. I was going to work for Alicia C. Easter's Enterprises, right? And so, but then I got scared because all the reasons you mentioned, like, oh my gosh, well, I need to be able to pay my bills. I've got health insurance and I've got, vacation and, and really like a support system. And, I know that I'm going to get a check every 2 weeks, right? And then I woke up one day and all I could think about was the candle business, the candle component of my company and the inventory. And I was just like, oh, it's time. I was like, oh, it's time. It's been time, but it's really time now. So I had a great, conversation with my boss, and it was beautiful because she's like family. And it's interesting how we think that people aren't paying attention. We think people might not be supportive. We think people are going to like try and hold us back. And that very well may be the case. But also, when you become honest with yourself, it's almost like the people that you were in fear of like letting down are like, finally, we've been waiting for you to say, like, she didn't want me to leave. It wasn't like she was ready for me to go, but she was like ready for me to go because she was ready for me to do what I was put here to do. Like, she knew I was struggling. And so it felt fantastic to be able to, put that letter in. And listen, I grew up in a family where it was like, you go to school or get a job. You don't leave a job until you have another one lined up. And so it's interesting because I remembered that anecdote that, so many people have said to me for so many years. But when I decided to move to LA 10 years ago, I didn't have another job lined up. I just knew I was tired of doing what I was doing. And so I was like, I'll figure it out. And I did. And within less than 30 days, I had another job. It wasn't even like, as hard as a lot of people around me were making it seem. And so that's another thing that Reiki and meditation has like helped me, and with yoga, it's like people do their best to have your best intentions. But at the end of the day, you have to listen to you. You have to listen to what your intuition is telling you to do in your time, not anybody else's. And God and the universe is going to push you, which happened to me. But at the end of the day, free will is still reigns supreme. So it felt fantastic to submit that letter. It was December 18th, 2020, and it was like the week before Christmas. And I was like, all right, this is it. This is it. We're done here. And it was like, and at first I was like, oh my God, wait, oh my God, wow, we're really done here. And it took a lot of just kind of like continued trust and unlearning of these systems that you'd, kind of like, been trained to operate in for, like I said, almost 7 years to kind of get out of and find my own groove and find my own sort of structure for my own business. But it felt fantastic. It was awesome. I mean, it was awesome. It's awesome to be able to do the work every single day. I wake up and I do what I want to do every day. And yes, that might seem super glamorous and whatnot too, but it's also like I work really hard. Mm-hmm. And it's the hardest I've worked in my entire life. And it is a lot of work, and it can be lonely because you are used to this, like, a friend of mine it calls it the whiteboard tribe, where you're just kind of like, you have a team of people around you that, like, you get on your whiteboard and you, like, collaborate and connect and throw ideas around together. So it can be a little lonely when you're an entrepreneur to not have that, but it's great. It's mm-hmm. great. I mean, it's fantastic. And we're just getting started.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's amazing. And yeah. I can totally relate to like the idea that it's like much less glamorous than I think maybe we have in our heads prior to taking that leap. Like, I feel like my life is certainly not very glamorous most days, but I would like not change that for the world. Like I would way rather get to wake up and choose how I spend my days and how I spend my time and do things that I'm really excited about than work maybe a job that I'm not so excited about. And I know you said you did love your job, at least for like a point in time. And I think that can be a very beautiful thing. But when we have something that's
Mm-hmm.
calling us and we get to wake up and work on that, there's just almost nothing better.
It's not, yeah, it's nothing better. It's like, okay, so every decision that I make every single day benefits me in some way. And what's benefiting me is benefiting the collective that I get to serve, the work that I get to do, the people that I get to interact with. So there's nothing better. And my mother was a serial entrepreneur, in her heart of hearts. However, she also had several different jobs because she had to, take care of my brother and I. So I'm in a place where I recognize the privilege and my ability to be able to make a decision, like leaving a situation where there's like, healthcare, but then also realizing I have my own healthcare. I paid for my own healthcare, and that not being super scary, as scary as I thought it would be. And so my mother had to take care of children, and it's just me, so I don't have to make a decision based off of, okay, the future for my kids. And so this is for me, being able to I have a niece and a nephew and several nieces and nephews, but really my brother has two children and it's him and I think about like, goodness, like this is so beautiful that they're getting to see me do this work. They're getting to see me, and the kids yoga that I teach every Saturday, they're getting to see this work that I do. They're getting to see someone who, little black girls and little black boys see someone that looks like them, like guide them and teach them and affirm, and
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have that, and so when we were growing up, my mom was just, she's a great mom and but she provided, and that was like, and again making sure that she did our best to make sure we stayed out of trouble. But it's the best feeling. And then when I was leaving my last job, I was, even in my letter that I wrote, it was like, what, this job used to be my dream job, and I was bright eyed and bushy tailed when I first got here, and throughout the journey here, it's time for me to open up this space for that to be someone else's reality now, because
Well,
it's no longer mine. So when you're able to even look at it from that perspective, taking yourself out of the equation, it kind of makes it a little bit easier, because you're just like in a very like, not in a self-serving way, but in a very much like, it's not about me anymore. And, let's make it about someone else. And that really was like, again, the cherry on top of me saying, okay, it's time for me to go. So,
yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Like
yeah.
everything from like, being able to be a role model to your niece and nephew in so many different ways
Mm-hmm.
to being able to just like open the door for somebody else to find that like their dream is that job, and being able to kind of like open the door for them. I think that that's such a beautiful way to look at that. And you've mentioned it a couple of times, so I do want to touch on this. Tell me about your candle business. I mean, starting any type of
Uh,
business during a pandemic is like kind of a little crazy, and you did it on top of running a yoga business and a full-time job, so tell me all the things.
Oh yeah, I mean that's on brand, Amanda. That's on brand. It's like, oh, we have 50 million things going on. Let's add one more. I started the I Am Candle collection, and it started because I don't know if y'all can see it here. It's a
Yeah, that's
little like
beautiful.
bright, but anyway, this is like the I Am Free, and so the I Am Candle collection started because we are sheltering in place, and in teaching my classes, I used to have this mantra, not used to, I still do, but it was called the I am free mantra. And I was saying in my classes, and I realized I was like, God, I want to still be able to bring that mantra to people, even though we are not in the studio anymore. So in addition to the online classes I was doing at the time, how can I bring more light into people's lives? Like, and because people are struggling right now. So what can I do? And so I started the I Am Candle collection, and we have I Am Free, we have I Am Brave, we have I Am Joy, we have I Am Love, we have I Am Beautiful. And we also working on some new scents coming out as well. So that'll be dropping in September. So I'm really excited about that. But it was started because, gosh, we lost there was so much loss last year, and there was so much, like, people were so scared and just kind of like, alone and trying to figure it all out. There was a lot of, like, grief happening and grieving. Yes, unfortunately, there were lives that were lost, a lot of lives that were lost, and people lost family members and friends and colleagues. But it was also kind of like, so we're on this collective grieving. So I was like, how can I bring the light that I feel as though I bring to people's lives, and I bring to the lives of those around me? How can I bring that into everyone's home? And so a candle line. And it was started in July. We started in July of 2020, and it was something where I was like, okay, let's just see what happens, and it took off, and it kind of, took me aback a little bit, because I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it was the inspiration that I needed for myself to finally say, alrighty, it's time to become like the full entrepreneur that we know that we're supposed to be. So with products and retail and doing this. And so, yeah, I started it, and the I am mantra is, may everything you do be a moving meditation. May everywhere you go be guided by peace. Your light is your vision and your protection, and may you use it to set your soul free. And I am strong. I am brave. I am free. And so, yeah, I was like, that's it. The I am. And the I am, a friend of mine that was working with me last year, he reminded me of this passage in the Bible, Exodus, like a reminder that, oh no, I'm not alone. So when I thought that I was alone last year, and when I thought I was alone on this journey to becoming who I am today, I was never by myself. I am. The I am sent me, who is God, I believe, and whoever you want to know, whoever your creator is, or you believe in higher power, right? But for me, it was like, oh, God sent me. God's here. My spirit angels are here. My ancestors cultivated this land for me to operate as a guest. So I'm not alone. I am.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And I feel like the idea of, we can't be in person. How can I take this thing that I was like, communicating and sharing in my classes and setting intentions with, like, how can I continue to share that with people? How can I share this light? It's so perfect that it becomes a candle. I know very little about the candle business. How did you actually go about like creating these candles?
Yeah, so I have a manufacturer who I work with, who I've been following for a while, and she, I was like, okay, I'll let you know when I'm ready to start a line, and she was like, okay, I'm ready for you when you are, and then, it kind of like I kept watching. I was like, okay, I'm ready, and then I got a little scared because again, I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm still learning so much about it. It wasn't like I didn't enter in this business the way that I entered it in with regards to yoga. Yoga was like just something I was going to. It was like in me. It was a process. It was a molding. Now, with regards to candles and the products business, it was like, okay, so I kind of leaped in, and then I had to like back because it was like, oh, no one told me this, or like maybe they did, and in very much my like I got it fashion, I was like, oh, I'll just figure it out. It'll be fine. It'll work out. And it has, but woo, it's been a lot of lessons. It has been a lot of lessons on, and really awesome ones in grace and vulnerability and acceptance and surrendering, and also understanding that people are going to ask really interesting questions, and they're going to have really interesting demands, and they're going to really not understand what they want out of life. However, they're going to want you to tell them what they need out of life. And when you tell them what they need out of life, they still might not listen. So it's a whole lot of that. It's a whole lot of that. So I'm just like, sometimes like it's funny, and like I said, it will keep you on your toes. It keeps me on my toes for sure. And another thing about light that I wanted to share was I was having a conversation with this person that I just met the other day, And he was talking about why he loves candles so much. He was just like the warmth of it. He was like, I'm a candle. I burn candles constantly. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And so for me, being able to, because I felt like I belonged to nowhere for so long, when I was traveling, it was like I didn't have like, I essentially like lived out of a suitcase for almost 4 years when I was traveling. And so I didn't really like live anywhere. And so for me, the candle is the reminder that when I light a match, when I strike a match and I see this blaze come and I light this candle, it's like, oh, I'm inside and I'm safe and this is mine, you know? And so for me, it's so much more than just a candle. And sometimes there's some candles that I've bought in the past where it's like, yeah, that's just a candle. But for me, it's so much more. It's so much. It's sacred. It's home. It's a reminder of home.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. I mentioned before that like my husband and I travel quite a bit, and I've actually taken to like when we're going to be in a place like an apartment or an Airbnb for like a month or more, a candle is something I actually really love to buy for the space because there is something really like I've settled here. I've got a candle.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And so having that, and then working with, and a part of also that process is there's manufacturing and whatnot and design, which I have an amazing designer, Hollis, who I've been working with. She actually helped me design my Ace Yoga brand, my logo and everything. And so even working with her and throughout that whole process, it felt like a whole nother like teacher training again, right? Where you're just kind of like, oh, what is the IAM? What is this about? But then also what is always going to make me do really well and be fine and successful is because I'm passionate and I care, but then also the ability to say, all right, step back, step away, delegate. Here we go. The product is done. Put it out there and then see how we can, if there's any sort of tweaks that we can make, next time, then we make those next time. So it's a lot of, again, letting myself off the hook, surrendering. And it's a journey. It's been a journey, but it's been great. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that that's such a cool aspect of your business. And I think it's just a reminder that for anyone out there, like sometimes I think we can get so caught up in, okay, I'm like, a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, I do this thing, and you have this kind of like draw to something else. It's like, go for it. You can bring those other elements of what you're interested and passionate about into your business and do it in a way that, is totally accessible.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so on that note, maybe you can tell us a little bit about like just kind of how you manage all these different aspects of your business. And then obviously I'm assuming it's like, different now that you don't have that full-time job, but I'd love to hear like, what does a day in the life look like? How do you make sure that all these like balls that you're juggling don't topple to the ground?
Oh, because sometimes you just let them topple to the ground.
Yeah, sometimes it has to happen.
You get to pick them back up. But here's the thing, when you're picking them back up, you pick them back up at your time and your pace. So you pick back up, okay, this baby is crying the loudest. All right, so we tend to that first. And so managing it all is something that has been a lesson in and of itself for me. And so I have the honor and the privilege of having someone who cares about me deeply and wants to see me win. Several people actually who are Team Ace and are instrumental in me kind of like staying the course and not giving up and not like feeling like I have to retreat. And so relying and being honest and vulnerable with these people and saying, okay, this is where I need help. So finding when you're most productive, ensuring that you do your best to stick to those times when you're most productive, but then leave a little room for flexibility when you travel, leave a little room for if you need a little bit more time on your walk for inspiration. And so before we started, I said, I'm going to tell you why I look like I was like still sweating after this workout, because I go on a run every single day. Sometimes it's 3 miles, sometimes it's 4 miles, sometimes it's 5 miles. But that was something that I started last year with a dear friend of mine, Jordan, who owns White Heat Yoga Studio here in North Hollywood, one of the yoga studios where I teach. We'd walk. She just had a baby last year, and we'd get together and walk when we could go outside. And then I was like, okay, this is really great for my mental health because, again, movement as a modality for me, a healing modality, is very important. And so having that scheduled into my day, all right, so we're going to go for a walk, either if we have an early morning client or we're going to go right after. And so that's a non-negotiable. On the weekends, Sundays are my days off. And so having doing a hike on Sunday, every Sunday, and then being able to just kind of get my mind clear for inspiration and get my schedule kind of, set for the week. And so a day looks like for me, waking up, I choose joy, I do my prayer, my meditations, and then sometimes I do my meditation before I go on a walk. Sometimes I'll do a walking meditation, and that's a part of it for me too. And then coming back and getting into the thick of it, getting into the meat and potatoes of my day, of my business. And what does that look like today? Is there days where there's a lot of clients today? Is it an administrative day? Then, again, having this schedule, right? Having this structure, but then leaving some room for some space for magic. Having a schedule allows you to be a bit more flexible in what you can and cannot do. And again, like working for yourself, you're like, okay, so the first part of the day, I'm going to do this work. And then the middle of the day, I'm going to go on a meeting. I have a lunch meeting. I have a call. I have anything that's going on, or I'm just going to sit here and write or sit here and stare out and do nothing. That's, again, the beautiful thing. I went for a walk at the beach the other day, and that was amazing that I got that ability to be able to do that and connect with one of my best friends, Jen Pasloff. And so from there, kind of seeing, okay, do I have a client in the evening? What are we doing in the evening? The days, shipping days. So if there's shipping days, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, shipping days, shipping out candle orders and whatnot, and checking that. There's social media engagement. So I have, it's like, okay, so I have this schedule that I finally found, I think, that works best for me and how I operate and how I produce, or when and where I produce the best results. So I just like a lot of freedom. And for me, also having structure coming from corporate environment was something that I learned there too, has been beneficial. So I know a lot of people who've never really worked in a corporate environment before, who have always just, not only, but been kind of working for themselves in the modalities of yoga, Reiki, private chefs, things like that. That was a big lesson for me, that they were telling me, just like, get structure to your day, make sure you plan out your day. So you can have some room there to navigate. And if you want to go on a vacation, and scheduling time for yourself is important too. So scheduling in time for you to for me to take a yoga class, for me to go take a boxing class, for me to, go on a walk, go on a hike, connect with a friend, is all a part of it as well. So that's kind of me. I don't know if that answers your question, but my days are full. My days are full, and sometimes they're full with output. Sometimes they're full with sitting. And what it took for me was to understand that even in the sitting, as my teacher wrote this book, Tracy Stanley, she wrote the book Radiant Rest. There's, liberation, there's freedom in the rest, so there's resistance in the rest of not having to feel like going. And that's the only way to seem productive and seem that you're doing life right, is consistently moving. Because that's almost a bit of for me, it was a recovering from the survivalist mentality that I used to have for so long, raising myself from when I was essentially 17 years old, went to college, and then my mom died, and both my parents are deceased. So getting out of that survivalist mentality, and then getting into this thriving life mentality, that's a whole nother part of the journey too. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing all of that. It's really great to hear. And I think the key things that I hear you saying that I think are so important are, this idea of making time and space for ourselves, and then also having structure to have flexibility. And I think this was something that I struggled with a lot when I started working for myself. Like, I feel like it's like I left the corporate world and I was like, I don't want to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Like, screw this. I did that. I didn't like it. I don't want to be chained to a cubicle. And then it's like, I just kind of
Right.
was like buck wild with my schedule. And then it got to a point where I was like, well, I actually just work all the time now, and that doesn't really work in the long term. So I need to go back to some sort of schedule. And it's not like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 necessarily, but I feel like it fits more within that sort of rhythm. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I've found this schedule now that works so that I've got this flexibility for time, like you said, creativity, self-care, time for friends, all of that, really beautiful and important stuff. But it is I think, important for us as entrepreneurs to have some sort of structure, schedule, and then time for flow, time for
Yeah.
creativity.
Because the thing is, the structure isn't the problem when it comes to the 9 to 5 schedule. The problem is you're doing work you hate.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I mean, that's the 9 to 5 is actually beautiful. It's actually like great. There's things, that's when the banks are open. I mean, it's bankers hours. That's like, and then Saturday and Sunday days off, right? There's nothing wrong with that structure. But like, I love how you said you went buck wild, because I think I did too. When I was like, oh shoot, I don't have to get up. I don't have to. Then it was like, I'm up at 6 o'clock, and even with the chickens now, girl, I'm up like 6 o'clock, and I'm done at like 7. And so it's like, but the thing is, I'm up because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna meditate, time with God, go on my walks, and that's my structure. That's my day. So the 9 to 5 isn't the issue. It's actually really beautiful. It's just that when you're working a job you hate, you're like, fuck a 9 to 5. This is not for me. Forget the man. And it's like, oh no, honor those hours because they worked this long for a reason.
Yeah. No,
Just get to
100%.
doing what you're put here to do, right? And that's, again, just like you, I needed to realize that too. Like, oh, I am working all the time. Oh, I have reached burnout. Okay, which is a real thing, reaching burnout, where you're like, oh, I reached burnout because I'm thinking I'm having to work 7 days a week just to keep my business going. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. So
For sure.
once you understand that that's not healthy, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. You're just like searching just to make yourself feel like, oh, I made the right decision, of stepping away from corporate America, or I want people to think that I'm, more busy than I'm actually am. It's like, no, I'm actually busy, but it's just like, also like, a lot of the times I was just kind of like making sure for me, my own self satisfying, that I didn't step away from a job just to have it, fall apart. And so just releasing that fear around it, because all of it is fear, it's fear. And so fear is not guiding this ship anymore. Love, peace, joy, vulnerability, joy. I choose joy every day as an embodier of joy through all modalities, like I said at the beginning. So.
Yeah, for sure. That's the last question that I wanted to ask you about, was because you said that, wake up, choose joy. And I think that, if you're watching the news or like getting too deep in the social media world, it can feel like the world is like a bit of a dark place. And I feel like every day we kind of have to wake up and choose how we want to be and how we want to show up in the world. And I think you can choose to kind of like feel scared or feel upset about the things going on, in so many different ways, or we can choose like the beauty and the joy. And I'd love to hear from you, just like how you wake up and choose that, even when things might feel hard.
I wake up. I'm excited that I got to do it again. And
it's a gift. It's a gift to wake up every day.
It's a gift. I have a friend. He is a dear friend. He's like, I'm like, what are you most excited about today? And without fail, every single time he's like, I woke up. Everything else is a bonus. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. We woke up and we got to do it again. And we got another chance to do it again. We got another chance to make a difference. We got another chance to start over. We got another chance to forgive. We got another chance. And so for me, I had a really, really dark moment, probably the darkest moment of my life last year in June. I'll never forget it, where it was like, I was considering, this is, I'm out. This is too hard. It's too much. I've done all I'm supposed to do here. Life is hard. It's too hard. I'm done. I'm tapping out. And then I was like, I was talking to a friend who was like, no, you have so much more to do. It's not your time. And it wasn't my time. It wasn't at all. And so for me, getting the opportunity to wake up and really be in my authentic joy, because I know the ladder, I know what it's like to wake up and pretend to be happy for almost 15 years. I know what that's like to be in a relationship where you are drowning inside, where all you're doing is like, I mean, I had a realization the other day. I mean, this is a super vulnerable share, but I had a realization when a friend was talking to me and I was telling him about a situation that I used to do in my last relationship. And he was like, he literally straight up said, wow, you had really low self-esteem. I said, yeah, I did. I did have really low self-esteem. And if we can get over ourselves enough to say, to be honest in those moments, like, oh yeah, I did have really low self-esteem. Oh yeah, I really was like, not like, walking in my true authenticity. I really was not grounded in my seat of awareness. I was on, I just wasn't. And the minute you get sick and tired of your own BS is the minute, the very moment liberation is like, hey girl, we're here. The moment like freedom is like, hey girl, we've been waiting for you. And this is not an overnight thing. I didn't just like wake up one day and was like, alrighty, enough of the sadness, enough of the heartache. It was like an active choice that I make every single day. That's why my business is joyful coaching. That's why my business is joyful yoga. That's why my business is led by joy, because I truly embody it. It is me. Even when I'm crying real tears, like yesterday, y'all, I was straight up stung by a bee. And I went through all the ranges of emotions. Like I was like on the phone with my friend and he was like, what happened? And I went through all these ranges of emotions. And at the end, I was like, whoo, that was crazy. And I was laughing. And it was a whole 10 minutes. He was like, yo, you just went through all the emotions that one can experience. And I was like, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it so great that I get to feel? Because we get to feel. I get to feel. I'm not taking that for granted because a lot of people can't. So you know what? I'm excited that I'm out here living in my authenticity, living in joy, and choosing it every single day, even on the days where I'm just like, no. I don't wanna. But then recognizing like, yes, it's not up to me anymore. It's not up to me. I mean, it is and it isn't. So, yeah, that's it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. And you really radiate that. So it's super contagious. And I just really love that. I'm so appreciative of your time today in this conversation. Can you share with listeners and everyone who's watching where they can go to find you, where they can check out your programs, your offerings, your candles, all that good stuff?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So yes, I am Ace Yoga LA on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. My website is aceyogala.com. My candle Instagram is I Am Candles by Ace. I also have a podcast with my best friend called What Are You Bringing? So we have 25 episodes for you to listen to right now. And all my offerings are listed on my website and on my Instagram. So follow me there. Let's connect. And like I said, I do offer joyful coaching, private coaching, one-on-one group coaching, events, yoga. Let's connect in person, online. I have kids yoga as well, meditation, and also I'm a master Reiki practitioner, which I've been doing a lot of Reiki lately. A lot of people are looking for release and stillness and, joy in all facets of their life with regards to their marriage, their relationships, their corporate environment, their work-life balance. So all of my offerings could be found aceyogala.com, and my email is there as well. So I'd love to have the support of everyone here. I started a scholarship fund in honor of my mother. And it's going to be for women who've experienced mother loss, people who've experienced mother loss, people who are looking to, develop a relationship that they never had with their own mother, and really learning to mother themselves so they can come to my workshops, retreats free of charge if finances are limited. So that scholarship fund is on my website as well. It's called Embodying the Energy of Joy. So yes.
Beautiful.
That is me, and my prayer for everyone is this: that you stay brave in your pursuit of joy. So you deserve it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been so wonderful. I'll make sure that there's links for everything that you just talked about so that people can go check that out. And just before I hit stop on this live, I just want to give a shout out once more to Interval and say thank you for them for making this possible for us to have this conversation.
Yeah.
They're doing
Hi,
so
Kyle.
much. Yeah, Kyle and the team is doing so much awesome work. Kyle connected us, which has been such a blessing. So really grateful for that. And it's just interval.com. I'll put a link for that as well for anyone who wants to check this out. And yeah, thank you to everyone who tuned in.
Thank you. Nice meeting everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Have a blessed day.
All right. All right, friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Alicia Easter, otherwise known as Ace. Make sure you go check out everything that she's up to. And of course, make sure you go check out interval.com/J/MBOM. And let me know what you think if you check them out. I would love to hear from you and hear how Interval is working for your business. Of course, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the show, and I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.